Eyes are the most expressive part of the face. They're the first things you look at when you see someone, and they truly are windows into the soul. So let's make them creepy. Without going into spoilers, there's a certain character in One Piece whose appearance is literally just a black silhouette and piercing eyes. My girlfriend wanted to cosplay this character to match another character that I'm doing who's even more of a spoiler.
Oh look, rocks!
So I immediately jumped at the opportunity to flex my growing electronics abilities. Using a few simple components and most of a Saturday, I created what I think is a pretty cool and spooky pair of glowing red eyes. Hello, my name is Nathan and this is Guh-Roo's Gadgets. The first thing I needed was a pair of circle LED rings, and after looking through a couple different products on Amazon, I found a pair that I liked. These are being controlled by a Seed Studio ESP32S3. I programmed it using the Fast LED Arduino library, which not only allows a single color, but full customization for the eyes. I briefly used Fast LED in a previous version of my LED grid project, which also used WS2812B LED strips. And I did not forget about that project, by the way. I just got distracted by all of the other projects I've been doing. I'm using a 2500 milliamp hour LiPo battery from Adafruit, which might seem excessive for how simple of a project this is, but you have to remember that the intent is to keep it running for as long as possible while at the convention. I briefly used an adapter for AA batteries, which are easier to swap out, but it was a bit too bulky. This is also why the wiring in the earliest testing phase looks a bit wonky with all the different adapters. Once I added a capacitor and made sure that my wiring was correct, it was time to make it portable. The brain part of it was simple enough to do, but if anyone has ways to further optimize this wiring, that would be very appreciated. I know getting a custom PCB made would probably be the best approach, but I'm curious if there are other techniques I could use while still in this phase of development. The 3-pin connectors attached to the LED ring were way too cumbersome, so the first step was to use my expert soldering skills to remove them. I measured the distance between my eyes and used some solid core wiring with a bit of heat shrink tubing to hold the eyes together while still allowing for adjustments as needed. The placements of the inputs and outputs on these rings allowed me to kill two birds with one stone, attaching them both structurally and electrically. Having less bulk around the actual LEDs and using the black wrapping lets the whole thing be a lot easier to conceal in the dark. I then added the input from the brain by running more solid core wire into the input of the left eye. After covering these wires up with some more heat shrink tubing and electrical tape, I reattached the 3-pin connector to the end so that I can easily remove the eyes from the brain. I put the primary brain components in the static-proof bag that the LED rings came in, threw that in a bag, and ran the wiring down to have the rings be directly in front of my eyes, and I already loved the effect. I was also pleasantly surprised to see that I could see perfectly fine through the glowing rings. The effect is kind of lost in brighter lighting, but I'm hoping that the thin black veil in front of it for the actual cosplay will help with that. Plus, this is only around 15% brightness, so maxing that out will make it even better. That will eat through the battery faster, but that's exactly why I chose one with a higher capacity. The project wasn't quite finished yet though, since I still wanted to add a blinking animation and simple expressions. The first step to this was setting each of the 16 LEDs to be a different color, so that I could identify which array index corresponded to which physical light. I then sorted each layer to be its own color, googled timings for an eye blinking, and made the blink animation by turning each layer off then back on. This might be my favorite part of the project because while our brains are evolutionarily trained to recognize even just two dots at eyes, adding a believable blink effect really sells it so much more. It also looks really cool from a distance, which I spotted while standing in front of my TV with them on. And of course it looks awesome with other colors as well. The expressions simply required a function that turns on specific LEDs from a given list, and I got some basic looks down for angry, happy, and sad. I also added what is supposed to be squinting, but I'm not really sure if it looks quite right. But that is the whole project. It's a fair bit simpler than some of the other projects I've already done and plan on doing for this channel, but it was an excellent way to learn more as I develop this hobby. This was also the first time I've made a cosplay prop with electronics, and it was a lot of fun, especially since I'll be able to reuse it for other cosplays. and Halloween costumes. Another project I had in mind for a long time now is an ESP32 powered mini controller. I'll be able to easily combine these two projects to remotely control the expressions and colors of the eyes. But until then, thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to, oh my god, I forgot to add a power switch.